All right. I didn't want to make this video. I don't really care about this debate that's going on between G3 and the hardcore Christian nationalists. Apparently, G3 is too soft. They're too liberal. Did you guys know that? The fundamentalist group, G3 Ministries, who's now having their conference going on as we speak, I think. Like, doesn't it start today on the sovereignty of God? Calvinists, but fundamentalists. And apparently they're too weak on things. They're too liberal. They're too soft for these hardcore Christian nationalists, patriarchists, everything Doug Wilson, they just follow right after, and they use the same rhetoric and they talk about women in the same way. And honestly, I'm just really, really sick of it. And I saw something on Twitter yesterday that was just, I think I tweeted it, like, this is pathetic, because it was absolutely pathetic. And it's coming from a channel that I know that some of you guys actually like. Some of you guys have been like, oh, you should give Jon Harris a chance. This Conversations That Matter guy. You should listen to him. He's got some interesting perspectives on the SBC and stuff like that. I'm out.
That's sheer insanity. I'm out.
I'm out on this guy. I don't care what happens, after this. This is just the most appalling thing that I've seen in a while from supposedly trained theologians. All right, here we go. We're gonna head over here. We're gonna look at this thing. Prepare yourselves.
All right, some questions from the audience. So here's one for 1999. Is it inherently better to marry your own race? So the word race is used, not ethnicity, not culture, but so I'm assuming that there's a genetic component that Ian Franklin is bringing into this. I mean, I think Stephen already kind of talked about this, but I don't know if any of you guys want to
just puff and smoke from Stephen Wolfe.
Is it better or worse? Does it matter?
Anybody want to tackle this question? Look at the awkward silence here, man.
I'll pick on someone if we have to. William, you want to take a crack at that? Or Josh? Josh, you haven't said much lately, have you? you probably talked the least in this whole thing.
I just rattled off. I just destroyed Owen, but okay, fine. I'll take it. Go.
All right, let's hear an answer.
I don't think it's inherently better or worse, but I think it's more common, and that's fine. That's not a problem. It's not something that we need to worry about.
Okay.
It's not a problem? All right, first off, the fact that Jon Harris read this comment shows just an unbelievable lack, I guess, of wisdom. Like this, it's just insane. Now, sometimes I get it. You're streaming, and I've been there where I put something on screen and I didn't read it beforehand, didn't have like any moderator to pull it out or something like that. That stuff happens. And so you accidentally read something. He could have immediately shot it down, but he doesn't. A question as racist as that, is there anything inherently good or bad about interracial marriage? Are you kidding me? To like actually let that be on your channel and not just be like, yeah, that's a ridiculous question, we're just going to move on from that. Because it is an inherently racist comment. Like, I don't put that kind of stuff on these guys. When they're talking about being Christian nationalists, I'm not one of those guys on Twitter that's just like immediately like, oh, they're just racist, they're kinnists or whatever the heck that's about. Like I don't do that. Other people do it. I don't do that, because you got to talk to these people. But the fact that they're just like letting this question be said and not immediately, as a host of a show, I understand. You shoot things down if you accidentally put it up. You're just like, oh, well, like that's ridiculous. Like, we'll move on from that. Or you give like a really sharp response of just like, hey, I know you love the channel. You gave me $20, but like that. No, we're not going to be having that kind of a conversation here. But that's these guys. They're having those conversations. They're introducing these ideas, not shooting them down. They're just entertaining them. And someone else said this on Twitter. I forget who it was. So if it was you, shout out to you. But like the idea that like these guys, they constantly have these racists coming into their comments and retweeting them and interacting with their stuff, or sometimes, being followed by some of these guys. And you just go like, there's a common denominator here. I'm not saying that these guys are, but the fact that they're entertaining this stuff for their audience is so messed up. And that response from, I don't know who the heck that guy is. I'll move myself around here. I'll put myself over the other wolf. But like, I don't know who this sweater vest guy is, but what a ridiculous response. Like, yeah, I guess it's fine. It's just common. It's like, what? And now, like, there are some people who are like, Dean, you're just jumping the gun. You didn't watch the whole thing. I did. I went back, I watched the whole thing, and I do know that they kind of get into it. All right. Now, maybe that's why Stephen Wolfe just wanted to puff his smoke, because he's mad about, the insinuations here. But let's listen to what they talked about earlier.
Grew in popularity in certain Facebook groups back, some of you guys may be aware of some of that history on Facebook. So there was like an actual group of people who claimed kinism. It was a particular thing, and the way I present ethnicity is opposed to that form of kinism. But does it?
I'd go off screen too. Like, I know he's probably doing something else, but I'd be off screen too as soon as he starts bringing this thing up.
Matter.
I wouldn't be on the screen.
That I could point that out and show that that's not, that I don't affirm that. I think it'd be pointless to try to convince him otherwise, even if it directly, despite the fact that, like, in one of my chapters, I say that intermarriage is good in creating a more like solid, more solidarity amongst a culture. It doesn't matter that that's in there. It doesn't matter that my book says nothing about interracial marriage or interethnic marriage. Doesn't matter that I define ethnicity more along cultural lines than I do genetic lines. It doesn't matter. So when he says ethnocentrism, he's tapping into a sense that ethnicity is a entirely genetic thing, and so then people should align around common genetics. Even though if you read the chapter, I don't argue against that explicitly. But again, it doesn't matter. So that's like the frustrating thing is
I'm sure it's very frustrating to have people come at you when you say nutso stuff. Oh my goodness. All right. So what he just basically said is that in his book, Stephen Wolfe goes into describing ethnicity, not along the lines of what people look like, not along the lines of where people originally are from, where their genetic ancestors are from, but where they have been for a while. I don't know exactly what that means, as far as like how long of a period that must be. But essentially, he's saying that it's more about your culture, where you're at. And so for him, he's looking at an ethnicity of like the United States. And so everyone who's been around the United States, even though the United States hasn't been around all that long, as far as just world history, he's describing everyone within that culture as being part of the same ethnicity. That's what I gather. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, but that's what I understand from what he's saying. The problem with that is that what you're doing is you're just trying to erase genetics. Like, this isn't even all that theological as far as this part goes. Like, it's just about science. Like, there are genetics. There are common links in our DNA that make us look a certain way, that help us to understand where we're originally from. And it's not about our culture in that moment. Now, sure, you can be naturalized within a country and blah, 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 blah. But to be like, this is my defense. This is why I'm not racist. This is why, it's like, that we can entertain these kinds of questions on our show. And just everyone stares at the screen waiting for someone else to talk about this thing. If I was there, which I wouldn't be, but if I was there, do you realize how fast I would have tackled that question? I don't care. I'd talk over sweater vest guy. I'd talk over, cigar smoking guy. Though I'd talk over both the wolves, and I'll just be like, hey, this is so messed up. Why is this even being talked about? But when you have eccentric ideas, bizarre would have been a better word. You bring in eccentric personalities with even more eccentric ideas that are just wrong and false and evil. And it is evil to think that anyone, given their culture, If that's how you want to describe ethnicity, you're wrong. But if that's how you want to describe ethnicity, to think that your culture makes you better than anyone else around the world, you are wrong. That is evil. That is racism. The Bible is very against that. But, they're like, oh, it's not about skin color. It's about, what nation you're in. It's the same dang thing. These guys don't trust Jon Harris. Conversations that matter. If you listen to conversations that matter, like, you really need to rethink that thing. Like, if this is how he is hosting his platform and allowing these kinds of thoughts to just be there, and you could be like, well, he's just facilitating a conversation. You have a responsibility as someone who has a channel, who has a podcast, who has any kind of platform, to filter what you show on your show. And to apologize if you overstep, or maybe he thought that they were going to take it a different direction. But the problem with that is that immediately they just go into something else. Like, let's get back to that original clip, which showed like them giving the answer. Let's go back there and just see how, Jon Harris deals with that after getting that ridiculous answer from Sweater Vest Guy.
Here's another one. This is for Stephen for $9.99.
Just moves on. This is pathetic.